here's my review of DTF St. Louis. This show is really messed up and uncomfortable and disturbing and almost at the same time very funny and extremely engaging. It is a very good. I really enjoyed this show. It's essential. It's got a lot of stuff going for it because in many ways it is a bunch of different things, as it's part murder mystery, part of like a affair between Carol. So basically it's about these three people, Carol, Floyd, and Clark, and Floyd and Carol are married, and then Carol is having an affair with Clark. But right off the bat, it's a murder mystery because we find out that Floyd is dead. Very early on, we discover that he is dead, and thus conducts our murder mystery. That's what kicks it off. And like every great murder mystery, and when it's interesting because within this particular story is when you have like when we know that there's an affair going on. It obviously gives us two immediate suspects, which immediately just kind of, and when you're watching this show, it does a really good job at subverting your expectations and constantly giving you red herrings. And with a show like this, you constantly see, like, you kind of, because a lot of it is, like, basically just Clark being interviewed by these two detectives, we're kind of going back and learning about the story. And we learn about Clark's affair with Carol. We learn more about Floyd from Clark, and we learn about it from Carol. And it's really fascinating because Carol has this really almost toxic personality that's just uncomfortable. But we kind of do understand why she's like this in a way, because she's very stressed out dealing with her son, with her husband, who she feels like isn't doing what he should be doing. And it's just kind of puts you all in this like just really disgusted. It's kind of like, it's in many ways kind of like watching The White Lotus, where you're watching terrible people, but for some reason you're just like, oh man, this is such an interesting story. But why it's called DTF St. Louis is that is the name of a dating app, basically specifically for people having affairs. It just like, when you have just something that's just like I said, this tone has a very gross tone to it, very sickening tone, but all in a way where it never really gets too dark because it actually is quite funny, and it just works. Another thing I think that this show does very well is throughout, I mean, like I said, this whole show is basically a flashback. We just get to see Clark and Floyd's friendship, and you get to see Floyd's insecurities. He's very insecure about his weight, about his health, about his body. And you see how much of a great friend Clark is. And it's just fascinating because it constantly keeps you on your feet, where like Clark is the one who's being accused of murdering his friend. And you're like, would he do that? Maybe he would, but would he? And throughout these flashbacks, you do dive more and more also, I think, into Carol. You see many reasons why Carol is the way she is. She's very concerned about her son, who has some special needs and needs just help. And she feels like her husband's not completely there for her. You can in many ways, you understand all these sick, twisted individuals, and it humanizes them while them still being kind of terrible people. I think that there's a really good scene with Carol and her son, as you could see how worried he is, or how worried she is about him, and which does prove that she does love him. And I think that it almost it tries to make her more sympathetic because of what she has to go through. And it just works. I really liked it. As for the app itself, it's much more, it feels like it's much more of a plot device because we have our detectives kind of learning more about this app, this basically affair cheating app. And like we see, oh, okay, why was Floyd talking to this? Why was Floyd called Tiger Tiger? What's going on? Why was he having an affair? Wait, he's having an affair with men? And it's interesting because in that it does a very good job of you questioning, wait, is he like bisexual? But then turns out it's kind of something different than that, and it reveals something about Floyd that isn't what you think. And it just like it adds so much layers and depth to these characters. I will say probably this show does a really good job of showing multiple, like I said, red herrings and also things that make you say, okay, so that's something's off with that. Okay, so maybe this is the case. And now I really can't feel, I don't really want to talk about anything else without going into more spoilers. So I am going to dive into a lot more spoilers here. It's fascinating because we kind of see that both Floyd and Clark have this weird relationship with each other, not in terms of them also cheating on their spouses with each other, but more in fact that in a way they're both, you find out they're kind of like consenting and sharing Carol with each other, which just makes it really uncomfortable. It, like I said, it's a messed up show, but it does make you think, okay, well, if this is the case, then okay, then I don't think that Clark killed Floyd. So later on, you find out that there was some weird stuff going on with Floyd, and then his son sees him, and because of that, he always wanted his son to look up to him. And throughout this case, we see that Floyd is just severely depressed. We eventually find out that it was essentially a suicide, and he tells his son in sign language. And it's really emotional. I thought it was genuinely really shocking. And it just left me like, oh, wow. I mean, overall, like I said, this show is really messed up. It made me feel, in a ways, many very uncomfortable, very sickened. But at the same time, it's extremely entertaining. It's very engaging. It's very funny. Like I said, it's in many ways a dark comedy drama. It's just weird because I think it's really got a lot of everything in it. It's a great murder mystery. It's a great drama. It's a great dark comedy. It tackles all of these different genres, and I think it was all done very well. And when you have great leads like Jason Bateman, like Linda Cardellini, like David Harbour, it just works. And this is what happens when you have just a great leading cast, because as weird and as interesting, though, as this plot and premise is, it wouldn't be as great without these great actors, and they're all fantastic.